All right, going live. All right, the date, October 11th, 1925. The time, well, it wasn't Monday Night Football, I can tell you that much. Probably 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Don't know that for sure. The teams, the New York Giants, playing their first ever official game, went to Rhode Island and played the Providence Steamroller. I've seen Steamrollers and I've seen Providence Steamroller. So pick your favorite. And the place, the Cyclodrome. Ooh, yeah. It's not MetLife Stadium, I can tell you that much. So it was the first game ever official game for the New York Giants. Now they had played a couple other games. The first game, it was kind of more like the Giants ever played in 1925. Was on September 27th, 1925. They played what we called the Newark Red Jackets. It was basically, it was kind of like a more or less kind of like a pickup game. The Newark Red Jackets, they played. It was kind of like a bunch of guys that got together. They apparently, what I was reading before the game, they did some calisthenics and stuff. They didn't do much of anything like that, and they went and they played the game, and they only lost 3-0 to the Giants. Giants first ever kind of quote unquote, whatever you want to call it, official, unofficial exhibition scrimmage game, whatever, was against the Newark Red Jackets. September 27th, 1925, the Giants would win 3-0. Then the following week on this October 4th, the Giants played basically their first official exhibition game, the New Britain All-Stars they played. They played that in Connecticut. And the Giants won that one 26-0. So on October 11th, right, 1925, this was the Giants' first ever official game playing at the Providence. See, I read some articles and it says the Providence Steamroller. And this one I'm reading right here says at the Providence Steamrollers. So now this was the Giants' first game of the season. The Providence Steamroller, or Steamrollers, this was their third game of the season. Actually, it was their fourth, but the first one was an exhibition game, which leads me to just an interesting little fact here. The Providence Steamroller, I'm going to call them Steamroller from here on in. They played their exhibition game. It was on September 20th, 1925, they played the West Point Field Artillery. Whoever that is, I don't know. Never heard of them. But they played them. It was an exhibition game. They beat them 127-0. And that was on September 20th, 1925. So that was their, the Providence Steamroller. Basically, that was their one and only so-called exhibition game for this season. Then they started playing their regular season. Interestingly enough, the first night game ever. First night game before football looked a lot different from what we know today. I'm going to go over here. Modern football fans are so accustomed to watching games played at night that they don't think anything of it. Of course, there had to have been a first night game. According to Pro Football Hall of Fame, the first National Football League play at night happened on November 6th. It was 1929. No, it wasn't 1925, but just little tidbit here. On November 6th, 1929, it was a game between the Providence Steamroller, who played just 7 seasons in the NFL, and the Chicago Cardinals, who are the oldest football team in the NFL. The oldest football team is the Cardinals. They've been around for like 125 years, and basically they've only won 2 championships. I feel bad for those Cardinal fans. Thing was, Providence was in the midst of a scheduling nightmare when rain rendered their home stadium, the Cyclodrome, a bicycle racing track, which I'm going to go over in just a minute here, useless, causing them to schedule, guys complain about Thursday games, right? You got to play Sunday, then we got to play Thursday, right? Well, these guys, okay, back in the day, played offense and defense, okay? And how's this for a schedule, right? Guys playing offense and defense. So their track, the Cyclodrome, was basically was useless, causing them to schedule 4 games in 6 days. They played 4 games in 6 days. One of them was the tilt with the Cardinals that drew 6,000 fans to Providence's Kinsley Park Stadium, maybe just for the game's novelty factor. The stadium had a fresh set of floodlights that were put to good use, and the ball was painted white to increase its visibility, though one writer compared it to a giant egg. Providence lost 16-0, and while the game is remembered fondly in the annals of NFL history, it's not the first instance of a football game being played at night. There was an attempt made more than 30 years earlier. Interesting. The first intercollegiate American football game on record took place on November 6, 1869. November 6th is proving to be an important date on football calendar between Rutgers University and College of New Jersey, known as Princeton University, (AA). While the version of football played that day was quite different and may have resembled the modern game, if you squinted hard enough, it nonetheless seems sports wheels in motion. Let's see here. Okay. Interesting. Here we go. From there, football evolved and colleges and universities swapped rules, with some even transversing international borders, as when Harvard University nicked a set of rugby-inspired rules developed by players at Montreal's McGill University. Their set of rules became the basis for the sport that spread to campuses around the country, according to history. In 1892, okay, it was time for a new innovation to enter the sport of football game played under newfangled electric lights. Interesting. So apparently the NCAA, Pennsylvania, 1980, it was like country's fair. According to the NCAA, a local newspaper published a rundown of what happened at the fair. The report included things like cattle show and, well, anyway, I'm trying to read this article here. It's not giving me too much of anything, but looks like there's a picture here. It looks like there's a picture. I don't know. It doesn't say who played. But apparently 1892, they tried to play a game on the inaugural night football game was slated to begin at 7:30 p.m. on September 28th, 1892. But kickoff was bumped up to 6:45 to take advantage of the last remaining hours of daylight before the lights were turned on and the crowd's jaws collectively dropped in amazement at the technological wonder of electric light. There were a lot of problems with the game. The field was in the middle of the fairgrounds, so it was full of less than ideal features like rocks, holes, and a contemporary report so eloquently put it, animal residue. It was a country fair after all. Another problem is that despite lots of lights being set up for the game, they weren't powerful enough to provide adequate lighting. Once darkness fell, the game lasted just 20 minutes, with teams running a total of 10 plays and not scoring any points. Players running into the light poles that had been installed for the occasion was also an issue. But there's an actual picture here. There's an actual picture of the first. It was 1892. Wow. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. But so the Providence Steamroller, okay, in 1929 played their first official, NFL night game when they wound up losing to the Chicago Cardinals. Now the game was played in the Providence Cyclodrome. Basically, it was a long. It was basically for a track for cycling. So you kind of get it. It was obviously it was long and just like basically a track, but it had some issues to it. And the stands were the same. It's not like if you just type it in the Cyclodrome and look it up on Wikipedia, there's pictures of it and all, but the stands were the same all the way going around. Like usually like in the NFL, like in the middle of the field, 50-yard line, all the stands are really high, and maybe toward the end zones, the stands aren't quite as high, but the stands were like maybe 50 rows high all the way around. Everything is just even. Let's see here. The Cyclodrome opened. So this is where the Giants played their first official NFL game against the Providence Steamroller. The Cyclodrome opened on June 3rd. Opened that year too, in 1925. Opened on June 3rd, 1925, and considered a state-of-the-art facility featuring a wooden 5-lap track. 5 laps around the track was 1 mile. Designed to hold 13,000 fans, making it the largest bicycle track anywhere in the nation at the time. Hard to be sure, but the theory is that the track was 5 laps to a mile, not 5 laps to a kilometer, as most tracks today might be. In 1937, the site was raised and one of the nation's first drive-in movie theaters was built. There you go. A little bit of history there for you. A football stadium. The Cyclodrome was an NFL stadium for 7 seasons from 1925 to 1933. The field was inside the steeply banked track, which cut sharply into the end zones and reduced them to just 5 yards in depth. Now, I think if you look at the picture here, I mean, you can look at the over picture and all and everything. I'm going to say, I don't know, maybe it was 5 yards, but the way in the corners, the way the track is, it cuts off the corners of the end zones, so the back corners of the end zone are cut off, right? So there is an end line, right? There's a goal line, but at the where it goes at the out of bounds line, right? In the end zone, it's like maybe, it's really cut off. If you ever look at the, maybe a picture of it on Wikipedia. So it's 100 yards long. It looks like the end zone might be 10 yards, but like in the corners of it, looks like it's certainly cut off. All right. So we have, during games, temporary seating was permitted on the straightaway portion of the track, which was so close to the field that players, after being tackled, often found themselves in the stands. In 1930, floodlights were installed at the stadium for night games. The Providence Steamroller. The Steamroller was established in 1916 by members of Providence Journal sports editor Charles Coppin and part-time sports writer Pierce Johnson. First team to play 4 regular season games in 6 days. So there's another little bit of history. If you ever get a Trivial Pursuit question, who is the first team ever to play 4 games in 6 days? The Providence Steamroller. There you go. Right. In 1929, the first team to play a night game under floodlights, November 6, 1929, at a different location than the Cyclodrome. And the Steamroller became the first New England team to win the NFL championship in 1928. They won it after the Giants. Giants won in 27. 1928, the Providence Steamroller won the championship. So, let's see here. Let's see, 80 years ago, the most exciting sports in New England were not found in Foxborough or at Boston Garden. At the time, some of the nation's best racing and football was a short trolley ride from downtown Providence. In the late 1920s, the Providence Cycledrome regularly packed in 10,000 plus fans to watch touring professional cyclists cheer on homegrown amateur and semi-pro anglers, or to witness the crushing hurly-burly excitement provided by the city's own professional football team. Tuesdays and Fridays were standing room only at the Drome. One Sunday, 13,000 fans were packed like sardines to watch the steamroller roll over the visiting New York Giants, which they did on October 11th. The Cycledrome was one of the sporting world's hottest tickets and one of the city's brightest jewels. Yet today, the building is gone and no marketer notes its place, and loyalties have moved north to Massachusetts, leaving the city bereft of homegrown loyalties. Let's see here. When the Cycledrome opened on June 3rd, 1925, it was considered a state-of-the-art track. Let's see here. The Cycledrome featured a wooden 5-lap track. Programs reminded visitors to kindly step on all matches and cigars and cigarettes to prevent fire from breaking out and destroying the structure, because it was wood. And so many of the patrons smoked harkens to another era, certainly, but probably also indicates that most of the fans who attended races were men. Though flappers defied convention and smoked publicly in the 20s, this was not common practice for women of the time. So I just got some more stuff in there, but if you go to Wikipedia, you can certainly check it out. They got all kinds of stuff there for the Cycledrome. Very, very interesting. Very interesting place. They said the New York Giants played their first ever game in the Cycledrome. Providence Cycledrome. Very, very interesting. Now this here, as I said, this was the wound up being the for Providence. Now this wound up being their third game. Now they didn't really fare all too well during the regular season. I mean, in 1928 they were the champions, but this year they finished 6-5-1. They were like right in the middle of the pack. In 1925 there was 22 teams, right? But they finished in the middle of the pack at 6-5-1. They scored 111 points and they gave up 101. The Giants, on the other hand, was their first year in existence. They finished in 5th place. They were 8-4-0. They scored 122 points and only gave up 67. So they gave up 67 points in 12 games, 5.5 points a game. Very, very good. Now, if you consider they were 8-4-0, but if you consider, right, they lost their first 3 games. They lost to Providence Steamroller, and then they lost back-to-back games to the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets. They didn't win their first game. It was the 4th game of their season, right, on where they beat the Cleveland Bulldogs. So the Giants actually started off 0-3. So to finish 8-4-0 was pretty impressive. That meant they won 8 of their final 9 games. The only game that they lost was at home to the Chicago Bears and Red Grange, 19-7. So other than that, I mean, the Giants pretty much ran the table after their first 3 losses. Now this game here was a little tough because I'm going to read a little story here, which kind of goes along with it. But let's see here. So the Providence Steamroller, they opened their season. They played back-to-back games, and there's a good reason why. They played, and it just goes to show you, they played two away games. Basically, both of them were like Philadelphia area, okay? They played on Saturday, October 3rd, and they played Sunday, October 4th. Now, the reason why was the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets only played their home games on Saturday. And so they played in Frankfurt Yellow Jackets on October 3rd, 1925. They lost 7-0, and which was in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Frankfurt's in Philadelphia. So they lost 7-0. Then the very next day in Minersville, Pennsylvania, they beat the Pottsville Maroons 6-0. So they won. They played 2 games in the same weekend, Saturday and Sunday. Right. And guys today complain about playing Sunday and Thursday. And these guys played both. They played offense and defense. So the Providence Steamroller coming into this game were 1-1. The Giants were 0-0. Giants hadn't played a game yet at all. So I said, so the Giants, the Giants finished their season against the Bears on December 13th, and so did the Providence Steamroller. But let's see, the Giants wound up playing a grand total of 12 games. So they played 12 games from October 11th to December 13th. So in like 2 months, they played 12 games, the Giants. Now the Giants on their roster, they wound up with a grand total of they had 29 guys played the whole season. Well, during the season for them. I do apologize. There's so many guys here that only played part of the season. Jim Thorpe was one of them. He only played 3 games. The third game of the season was the Giants' first home game. They lost 14-0 to the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets at the Polo Grounds. Jim Thorpe got hurt, and his career was over with the Giants. He played some more, but that was his final game with the Giants. So he played 3 games. He played this game here with the Providence Steamroller, and then he played the following weekend back-to-back games against the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets. They played Saturday and Sunday against one another, the Giants and the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets. Jim Thorpe played in both of those games. The second game on Sunday would have been October 18th, which we're going to go over tomorrow night. He hurt himself, and he never played again. He was getting paid $200 to play a half. Now, because he was 37, 38 years old at the time. He was trying to work his way. Actually, he was 38. Because he was born in 1887, and this is 1925. So he was 38. So he was trying to work his way into shape. So what his contract is he was getting, what I read, he was getting Jim Thorpe $200 to play a half, only 30 minutes. Until he worked his way into game shape, I guess it was. So maybe, I don't know, halfway through the season, he would have started playing maybe the whole game. And I don't know if they were going to double his salary to $400 a game. That I don't know. But he was getting paid $200 from what I read to play 30 minutes of football. And that's what he did. So he played the first 3 games, and the third game for the Giants, he got hurt, never played again. But the Giants had there's one guy here played 3 games for him. Another guy played 2. Somebody played 9. Somebody played 3. Somebody played 2. Another 4, 3, 2. One. Tim Warren played 1 game for the Giants. Ed McGinley played 2. Bill Kenyon played 1 game for him. Somebody played 2. Somebody else played 3 games. He said, it's not like the way it is today. Like most of the guys on the roster, unless they're like injured and go on IR or something, they played. Most of the guys played. They're available for at least most of the games, but some of these guys only played like a game or 2 or whatever. Now, also, back then, the guys played offense and defense. So a lot of times, sometimes the guys on the sideline never even got into play because, sometimes they really didn't substitute. Sometimes if you had a substitute for a guy, he might have been hurt and he's not going back in the game. But the Giants had 29 guys for the whole season on their roster. The Providence Steamroller had 30 guys on their roster the whole season. Let's see, the Giants. Let's see, what did the Giants do? The Giants scored 122 points every 10.2 points per game, which was 5th in the league, actually. 10 points a game was 5th in the league. And I said points against the 67, they gave up 5.6 points per game. They were 5th in the league at 5.6 points per game. So that's some good defense right there. I said, now the Providence Steamroller, they were very mediocre. Let's see here. Their coach was Archie Golombeski, maybe. The Giants coach was Bob Folwell. He coached 1 season for the Giants, 1925. I'm going to show you a picture of him in just a moment here. But Archie Golombeski, He was their coach. They said the Steamroller wound up 6-5-1. This was their third game of the season they were going to play. They scored 111 points. They averaged 9.3 points per game, which was 8th in the league. Points against, I gave up 101. They gave up 8.4 points per game, which was 9th in the league. So now, interestingly enough, all right, as I said, the Giants, they wound up playing. So they had their like two. They had like on September 27th, they played the Newark Red Jackets, which was like kind of like more like a pickup game than anything. Then they played the New Britain All-Stars and they won 26-0. So basically on October 4th, the Sunday, October 4th, that's when they played their official first exhibition game. So this was their first ever, regular season game. I'm going to read you something here. It's just kind of interesting. And I'm going to show you a picture too that kind of goes along with this here too. But this talks about, how it was back then. I mean, because back, nowadays, if you're going to go to Rhode Island, you're going to take a bus. Like if the Giants, they're going to hop in a bus, right? I mean, I don't think they'd be flying in. They might, hop in a bus, drive for a couple hours and be in Rhode Island, right? Well, that's not the way it was back then. Back then, the Giants took a boat, all right? So things were a little bit different back then. So, let me, I can find this here. I got hopefully, it's a good book. I mean, it's old. It's old. It goes up to 1963. So there's no helmet catch. There's no Super Bowl champions. Lawrence Taylor was only like 4 years old, I think, when this book was made. So this talks about some of the earlier stuff, up to 1963. I know it talks about the 62 championship game in here and all. So this is where I'm getting this information at from this book here. It's pretty good, pretty interesting. I just lost my page here, so I know it's on page. It talks about the boat trip that the guys went on. Let's see here. Let's say the Giants, despite their troubles, seemed impressive enough in their opener game, an exhibition game in the rain at New Britain, Connecticut, against Ducky Pond's All-Stars. Ducky Pond was their coach. They had two coaches, but Ducky Pond was one of them. That was his nickname, Ducky. But Thorpe scored on a 3-yard. Jim Thorpe scored on a 3-yard plunge. The Giants scored 4 touchdowns that day. McBride, Hinky Haynes, in the Giants' 4th game of the season, he scored the Giants' actually first 2 touchdowns. So if you ever get that Trivial Bazoo question, who scored the first touchdown in Giants history? Hinky Haynes against the Cleveland Bulldogs. 4th game of the season. The Giants won 19-0. That was the first game the Giants ever won, too, at the Polo Grounds. So Hinky Haynes and Jappy added touchdowns in the 26-0 victory. That was the Giants that they won against the all New Britain team, 26-0. That was their exhibition game. And they said, we thought we were pretty good, said the 235-pound, 6'1" Milstead, nicknamed Wally by his teammates. Then we climbed aboard that damn boat for Providence. So they took a boat to Providence. The boat, carrying cargo in addition to the Giants, began to list badly in the North River. They almost didn't make it to their first ever game. So started to list badly in the North River, almost turned over near the battery and barely made it to Providence the next day. The beds were too small, the water was too rough, and the atmosphere decidedly non-Spartan. Heine Benkert fell asleep with a cigar. That was one of the Giants, I think, halfbacks. Heine Benkert fell asleep with a cigar in his mouth and almost set the boat on fire. And another player was drunk most of the trip. Only Jim Thorpe, I'm going to show you a picture of him, tired and surprisingly tame, seemed untroubled, playing solitaire under the dim deck light. It was a sick football team that arrived in Providence and lost to the Steamrollers 14-0. Once Thorpe broke loose momentarily on a long run and showed his younger teammates a fleeting glimpse of what he once had been. On that one run, Thorpe just gave the tackler the hip, and that bimbo must have flown 20 yards, said dapper end Lynn Bomar. It was just a sock with the hip. They rave about some players who have snaky hips. Well, Thorpe, the battering ram hips, and that one heck of a lot better. Mara was not pleased with the Giants' performance. He had been, unfortunately, he'd been counting on a good showing in Providence to help boost sales for the Polo Grounds opener against Frankfurt Yellow Jackets from Pennsylvania the following week. He was already at the time, and this was the first game of the season, he was already $25,000. He was already out $25,000. Mara placed ads in the New York newspapers, courted writers, and hired publicity men and sound trucks, and distributed more than 5,000 free tickets every week. So he's giving out tickets just to get some people at the game. His prices were 50 cents, $1.10, $2.20, and $2.75, which was scaled well below the college games, because back then college football was freaking huge. Baseball, boxing, college football, huge back then. Football, NFL, couldn't even give tickets away. Or I had to give tickets away to get people in the stands. Let's see, the tickets, but his tickets were still not selling. The day before the home opener, the Giants traveled by train to Frankfurt and Philadelphia, and they lost their second league game 5-3. Yet Mara still wasn't discouraged. On the morning of October 18th was the Giants' first home game against the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets. Yet Mara still wasn't discouraged. It was warm, and the sun shone brightly on the Mara clan as they stood outside Our Lady of Episcopalia Church on 156th Street off Riversdale Drive. They had just come from Mass and were on their way to the Polo Grounds. Well, said Mara to a friend, today's the day we see if I can put pro football over in New York. And they did. There was an estimated 25,000 people in attendance. Only half of them paid their way in, though. So, so he was giving away tickets, and there was about 25,000 people showed up, but all, not even half of them paid their way in. So it was a lot of free, a lot of people came there for free. As I said, he had to give the tickets away. But here's a picture, okay? This is a picture of that boat trip that I was talking about. And it shows Jim Thorpe playing solitaire, right? And the guy next to him is Bob Folwell, the Giants coach, right? So it's the top picture here. Right here is Jim Thorpe, right? He's playing solitaire, and that's the coach Bob Folwell there. I'm not sure if he's got what he has here. It's a game plan or something there, but so he's down there in the boat, right? He's all, I guess, under a light they were talking about, but that's a great Jim Thorpe. So that was on that boat trip over there, and obviously, I'm sure one guy was drunk, and it was what it was. I mean, the accommodations and everything aren't like they were today, so it was kind of a little bit of a disadvantage to the Giants, and they wound up losing. But it was just an interesting game. So I looked. It just goes to show you back then. I mean, it was. I don't know what league it was, right? But I'm looking through the New York Times and the New York Daily News back then, 1925. And in the New York Times, I'm looking in the sports section, and I see New York Giants. I'm like, oh, cool. Here we go. Here's a story on them, because I'm looking for anything for the first ever game for the New York Giants. First official game. Nothing from the New York Times or the New York Daily News. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. But I saw a couple times the New York Giants. I'm like, okay, here it is. I'm looking and I'm reading the article. It was a soccer team. The New York Giants had it was a soccer team. I don't know what league it was or whatever, but the one story I read, they beat a team. I think it was 3-1. So the New York Giants had there was a soccer team named New York Giants, got more publicity than the New York Football Giants did back then. I mean, there's no story in the first two games. There's no stories on October 11th. Sunday, October 11th. Well, actually, I'm sorry. Should I say Monday, October 12th? Okay, because the games gets played on Sunday. So in the newspapers, Monday the story gets put out. So you look in the Daily News and the Daily Times actually, I got a couple old books right here too. It says it's from the Daily News, and then I got another one here. Shows some old stuff here. The New York Times goes back into like the 20s and all and everything. But if you look in the newspapers, so on the Monday after this game, there's nothing. I got something online from the Boston. I think I'll read it. I think it's from the Boston Globe. That's a little article on the game. But there's absolutely nothing in the New York Times. And I looked like into the week and I still couldn't find nothing. Like maybe it was a couple days later or something, nothing. And then I looked the following week, they played on the 17th, October 17th, they played against the Giants against the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets in Philadelphia. I looked on Sunday, right, in the New York Times and the Daily News on Sunday, October 18th, 1925, to look to see if there was anything for the Giants' second game. Nothing. So I don't have anything at all. I'm going to try to find something somewhere along the line on the second game, and when I do, I'll do a video on that. But so I don't have anything at all. I found this one article for the first game. That's why I'm doing this video. But I have nothing for the second game that they've ever played. So if I ever find something, I'll do a video on that. But their third game, their third game, which wound up being their first home game, which was Sunday, October 18th. When they played I actually have a few pictures from it too as well. But when they played the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets at home on Sunday, October 18th, 1925, the following day on Monday, October 19th, 1925, there's a story. There's a couple stories. So I'll have some stuff on that. So when I do my next video, it'll be the Giants' third game. So I got the Giants' first game and I got their third game. And I think I might have almost every other game after that. I gotta look, but I know I got their third game, so I'm good to go there. I have nothing on their second game. I find something in the papers or whatever. I might have to look like maybe in a Philadelphia paper. That might wind up doing it for me. If I can find something, maybe I don't know, the Philadelphia Inquirer or something like that or whatever. Back then, they might have something on it, and then I can do a video on that. But as of right now, there's nothing. But interestingly enough, here with the first game, this is from the Boston Globe, Monday, October 12th, 1925. So the day right after the game, the Boston Globe had a little article here. There was no pictures or anything, so I've never seen a picture of I got a picture of the Giants' first home game, but I have no picture at all that I know of from their first two games ever, which were both road games. But the article, it says Steamrollers win from Giants. Good wording. 14-0. Steamrollers win from Giants 14-0. Now let's see here. It was kind of interesting here. Let's see if I can pick up a box score here at all or anything. Nah, I guess not. Let's see here. Let me click on something here. Because all the scoring was done in the second quarter of this game. Okay, let me click on this box score. And as I said, they lost 14-0. Both scores were in the second quarter. The Giants obviously never scored, and the Steamrollers didn't score in the first, third, or fourth quarter. 2 touchdowns were in the second quarter. And I'm not exactly sure, it says the attendance was about 8,000 people, but I'm not exactly sure that the rules there must be a little bit different, because we're gonna go over this here in just a minute here. But I'm a little. It says 8,000, but then also here it says before 7,500 fans. So it's anywhere between 7,000 and 8,000 people there watching the first Giants ever game at the Cyclodrome. So Providence. On October 11th, a group of Gridiron stars, unheralded for the most part in their college days, helped the steamroller of the city open its home National Professional Football League schedule auspiciously. The wearers of the black and orange conquered Bob Folwell's. He was the coach of the Giants. He only coached the Giants for the one season, 1925. Conquering Bob Folwell's New York Giants 14-0 before 7,500 fans. Now, Pro Football Reference said 8,000. So I don't know. This article says 7,500, but there's no official. I mean, they don't. So it was probably 7,000 or 8,000 people, somewhere around there. The visitors started lining up, embraced no less than 8 former All-American luminaries, including Century Milstead from Yale and George McKinley from Penn as tackles. Now the Giants were they were big, they were well sized, right? Outweighing more than 10 pounds per man, the roller steamed into action with a light backfield that could do little with the heavy Giants line. But special teams, right? What started the avalanche against the Cowboys, right? The other night when they lost 40-0. Special teams, right? What happened here? Special teams. Now, if the Giants wind up tying this game, it still wouldn't have mattered because their winning percentage, they would have been 8-3-1. The Chicago Cardinals won in 1925. They won the NFL championship in 1925. So their winning percentage still would have been better. So even if the Giants didn't lose this game, say they tied it, they still wouldn't have mattered in the long run. So, but the Giants, special teams did them in for both touchdowns in this game, both. Let's see, the light backfield that could do little with the heavy Giants line, but the home machine capitalized every break. There we go. A block punt in the second quarter was converted into a touchdown when Stretch Garvey, formerly purple. I'm not sure what that means, but obviously that means, I guess, some type a team. I'm not sure. Formerly purple end. I'm not sure what team purple is, but scooped up the ball and fell over the line for 6 points. So the Giants had a punt blocked. Let's see here. Said Franny Garvey blocked punt recovery in the end zone. Franny Garvey. Oh, okay. I guess Stretch must be his nickname. Says what touchdown when Stretch Garvey, formerly purple, and scooped up the ball. So it says Franny. I guess Franny Stretch Garvey must be his. I guess Stretch must be his nickname. He blocked punt recovery in the end zone. Dutch Connor kicked the extra point and put the steamroller up 7-0. Now this is what I don't get. I'm trying to get some kind of confirmation on the rules here. Right? Kind of get a confirmation on the rules here because it says kicking off after the touchdown, Jim Thorpe, formerly of Carlisle, booted to Cy Wentworth, former New Hampshire state star. So the steamroller recovered a block punt in the Giants' end zone, and they're telling me here that the Giants kicked off. Why? That must be the rules back then. I'm trying to get some kind of confirmation. I sent an email to somebody to see if I get something back. But the steamroller blocked the punt and scored a touchdown. In today's NFL, after the Cowboys blocked the field goal for the Giants, ran it back for a touchdown, right? The Cowboys are kicking off to the Giants. The Giants aren't kicking off to the Cowboys. But here, The Providence Steamroller blocked the punt, right? The guy, Stretch Garvey, recovered it, rolled in the end zone, gave Providence 7 points, 6 points. They kicked the extra point. So Providence scored. Now the Giants are kicking back off to the Steamroller. So what they're telling me here is Jim Thorpe now from the Giants is kicking off to the Steamroller. Why are the Giants kicking off to the Steamroller? The Steamroller just scored a touchdown. So I don't know. That must be the rules. Back then, because I mean there were different rules back then. So maybe that's what it was. It said so. Jim Thorpe kicked off to Cy Wentworth. The light and wiry back caught the ball on high 5-yard line. I'm not sure what the high 5-yard line is. I don't know. But he caught the ball on the 5-yard line and running behind well-formed interference completed 96 yards for the second touchdown. So, and Dutch Connor with the extra point. And see here it says 92 yards. So I don't know. He caught the ball on the 5. I don't know. So it was over 90 yards he went. But Cy Wentworth went 92 yards or 95 yards or 96 yards for a touchdown right after they blocked the punt. Right? So instead of the Steamroller kicking off to the Giants kicked off to the Steamroller and they ran it back for a touchdown. And they scored. They blocked the punt, special teams. They ran a kickoff back, special teams. 2 touchdowns, 2 special teams touchdowns. Right? Now, interestingly enough here, the Giants dominated this game, but going on a defensive in the second half, the Roller punted continually. The Giants battered away at the Roller line for 2 successive marches to the home 10-yard strip. That 10-yard line, 10-yard strip, only to be held for downs on one occasion and to lose again when Wentworth intercepted a forward pass, I guess, and ran to midfield before being hauled down. So the Giants got down inside there, inside by the 10-yard line, but they failed to come away with any points. One time was on because they needed touchdowns. So I guess, you're not getting many opportunities. If you get down to the 10, I guess, especially you need touchdowns back then, you go for touchdowns. So instead of trying to kick a field goal, which they might have, maybe Jim Thorpe or somebody might have kicked a field goal, but they needed touchdowns. And why do they need touchdowns? Because the special teams, they blew the special teams. And it got down there 2 times. And, said another one was lost on an interception. Let's see. So after the interception, he ran to midfield before being hauled down. The Steamroller made but just 2 first downs all game. 2. Compared to 8 made by the New Yorkers. So the Giants only made 8. But the Steamroller only had 2 first downs. They scored 2 touchdowns and they got 2 first downs all game. So the Giants, between their miscues, wound up losing this game. It was special teams, right? Thorpe had trouble in getting away his punts so fast were the Steamrollers in breaking through. So he was just having a hard time getting his punts away. And I guess one of them might have been blocked, maybe for the initial touchdown. Let's see here. Said touchdowns were made by Garvey and Wentworth. Points by goal after touchdown by Connor. He made 2 of them. It says the referee was Crowell and Swarthmore. Umpires were Hollerman. Linesman were Kentz. Field judge was Jameso. It's hard to read some of his writing. The times were the fifth quarters were 15 minutes. The Giants had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Looks like they had 15 guys playing there. Because Thorpe played, and then Benkert came in and relieved him. So the Giants had a couple of positions where they had 2 guys play. So, but they had 15 guys play the game, according to this article here, right? The Steamroller, they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Looks like they had 16 guys playing this game. I mean, substitution was nothing, it was, for the most part, was very few and far between. But interestingly enough, I said the Giants wound up losing because of special teams. And basically they pretty much outplayed the other team, but their special teams did them in. So the Giants started their season off 0-1. And I said they would wind up playing the following week. They would wind up playing Saturday and Sunday, back-to-back game against the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets. And unfortunately for the Giants, they would lose both of them. So they would start off their season 0-3 before on November, because they played October 18th was their first game. Let me see here. I gotta pop this up here. Nope. That's not it. I got something here. Okay, here we go. The Giants had a game against the Buffalo Bisons that was canceled, that was postponed. So they played a game on October 18th, and then they're supposed to play a game the 7 days later, but the game was postponed against the Buffalo Bisons due to rain. I think it rained for a couple days. I think there's an article on that, so I can do a video on that one. So because due to rain, the game against the Buffalo Bison was postponed. It was postponed, and they wound up playing it on November 3rd. So I mean, just crazy stuff happened back then. Crazy stuff happened back then. But I mean, I said this was the Giants. This was their first ever game. They played against the Providence Steamroller, and they lost 14-0. And it is what it is. The two special teams blunders, block punt for a touchdown, and they ran a kickoff back for a touchdown. And that was the two touchdowns. The Giants outplayed them. They just could not punch the ball across the goal line or kick a field goal or anything. So the Giants got shut out in their first ever game, 14-0. So that pretty much wraps up here. So that's exactly what happened on this day, October 11th, 1925, in New York Football Giants history. I'll see you soon.